In this video, I'm going to show you how to rotoscope in After Effects to select part of your image and make it separate from the rest of your image. You're going to be placing some text behind a person and animating that text and changing the color of the background as well. So to start with, you need to download the footage that I've given you from Canvas, and I'm going to go ahead and in After Effects I'm going to create a new composition from that footage, and I'd like you on your desktop to go ahead and make a tutorials folder, something that you will be keeping these files organized in. So I've got a lot of extra stuff you won't have, but you should have this file, which is man texting on the street, so import that. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is go ahead and shorten this. We're only going to do 5 seconds of it. Actually, I'm going to do this end of it. This is the length of the whole project, so I'm going to make the whole project 5 seconds, and then I'm going to hold Shift while I drag that over so that I've got that locked in at 5 seconds. That's all we need to do. So all this clip is this dude standing in a street corner texting, but we're going to isolate this guy from the rest of it so we can put some text behind him and change the color of the background as well. So first thing you need to do is duplicate the layer, and you do that by holding Control D. Okay, so Control D, I've now made 2 layers because I want a front and the back. The top one's always going to be the one that's on top when you're thinking about how you're going to organize that. If you want to rename that, you could rename that and call it front if you want. Okay, so this is an important part. If we try to rotoscope in the composition that we have open right now, it's not going to work. So we're going to have to go ahead and open up the front video only, and now we've got something that we can rotoscope with. So this is the tool that you want right here, the Rotobrush Tool. Okay, and now we've got this green plus sign. You can adjust the size of that by holding down Control and then dragging. You can make your circle super huge or super small, depending on how you want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and drag this around here, get this guy's general body and shape. Okay, so you can see with the purple line what has been highlighted from this section. Okay, so obviously there's some things that are wrong. If you want a better idea, you can click right here and you can kind of cycle through. You can see exactly how much is left. Okay, so obviously we need to do a little work before we're going to be able to move forward with this. You can see this little warning right here. It says draw Rotobrush and refine edge strokes at full resolution for best results. You go do that by going to View, Resolution, and then Full, and that helps you see things a little clearer. So I'm going to press this key up here. It's between, on my keyboard, it's right next to the 1 number at the top of your keyboard. I'm going to press that, and that brings this whole thing bigger so I can work, able to see what I'm working with a little clearer. I'm going to make my brush a little smaller. I want to get the edges right here. I want to get his ear. I'm going to get the edge of his elbow. It's going to depend on, exactly what frame you got it on, but in general you can kind of work with that. Okay, so this is a good example right here. Right here at the edge, I'm going to choose to zoom in right here. Right on the edge, here on the edge of his shirt, I've got something that I don't want. So I'm going to make my tool smaller, and then I'm going to hold Alt. And while I'm holding Alt, it's going to go red. It's going to be a negative minus sign. So now I'm taking away from my selection. So you're just going to have to work with this and try to get it as sharp as you can. You've got a pretty good video to work with here because the edge between his body and the rest of the picture is pretty easy to see. So I'm going to zoom out. Right now I'm at 800%. I don't need that much. But you can kind of see what you're working with right there. I've got a little bit of his shirt that I want to add. So I've got most of his body done. Something that's always going to give you a little bit of trouble is the hair, especially if he has fine like wisps of hair around the top. So to take care of that, you can go up here to Refine Edge tool, and you can change that just like you would the other tool. Hold down Control while you do that, and you can just draw a box around here, and it's going to be able to find the edges for those really fine pieces of hair and such. So take a look and see by changing your settings here, you can see what you've got. So that's looking pretty decent. I would still do a little more work on his arms right there. You don't want to overuse the refine edge tool because that can like start to pick up some other stuff that you don't really want. So you're just going to have to play with it until you get it to a point where you're happy with it and it looks good. And the other thing you can do, if you're having trouble like me trying to get it to look exactly how you want, is you can go here and change the feathering. So that will change how sharply defined the edge is. So you can play with the feathering and get a good idea of exactly how much it's going to let in. The more feathering you have, the more it's going to let in. You can adjust all these settings a little bit. Got a little bit of his background there. You're just going to have to work with it until you get to a point where you're happy with it. And it looks good. So when I've got everything set, that's still only one frame. So keep in mind that this has, depending on what kind of footage you're using, up to 20, usually about 24 frames per second. So to be able to get it to analyze all of it, I'm going to use this little track down in here. So I'm going to spread that to the front and the back of my footage. So in the background, After Effects is going to analyze all of that. And you can kind of see there that little green line that it's slowly spreading. It'll show me how much it's already done. So if I give it a second, it'll slowly inch up that green line. When you've more or less got things set how you want, you can kind of see, like in this little part right here, I got a little bubble that's popping up. So I'm gonna try to ixnay that so that that doesn't continue. When you think you've got things set more or less how you want them, you can hit freeze, and this will go ahead and analyze the entire clip as long as you've selected it with this, with the, I don't know, zebra stripes? I don't know what to call that exactly. But that's going to take a few minutes to try to figure out where everything belongs there. So I'll come back when that's done. The freezing is done. Everything is rendered. So I can go through this and should be able to see if there's any glaring mistakes or holes that have been made here. If you catch anything that's really obvious, you're going to have to be able, you're going to have to unfreeze it, and then you'd have to go back and do that again, which is obviously not ideal. But basically, we've done the rotoscoping part of this. So if we go back to the composition, because remember we were just in the layer, it looks as much as it has before, but if we get rid of the back, then we can see that it's all gone. So now we can go ahead and add the text that we were talking about. So I'm going to ask you to go up here and make a text box. You can draw that, and we're going to use your name again. You can make it whatever color you want. I'm going to go ahead and make mine white. You can just use your first name as you want, if you want. I just want to make sure that it's you doing it. I want you to make it pretty big enough that it's going to be taking up a lot of space on the screen. I might stretch that out a little bit. You can mess with all the settings over here and make it look however you want. Okay, notice that it's not right now behind our object, and that's because it's the top thing that's listed down here at the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and move that so in between the two layers, and now it's behind him. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and animate this, because otherwise it's just going to be static, not that exciting behind him. Okay, I'm going to go under here under Effects and Presets. I'm going to put Data Stream, and I'm going to apply that to my text layer. And that's going to jumble up the letters. They're going to come flying in from all directions. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, and I want you to mess with the keyframes a little bit. Keyframes are really the key to making a lot of crazy effects. So I want you to select both of those by dragging both those keyframes and make sure that it's going throughout the whole thing. And After Effects is really not meant to see exactly what it's going to look like moment by moment. So it's going to take a second to watch that, but you get the idea that the letters will be flying around and will be looking really different. If you haven't already, go to resolution, and I'm still at full right here, so I'm going to bust it down to quarter, and that's going to help me preview things a lot smoother, because trying to do it at full resolution is going to be really slow. Okay, so there's a lot of craziness, but by the end it should have settled down, and the word should be more or less as it's going to be. Okay, there's a few other things I want you to do for this tutorial before you turn it in. We're going to go to Channel Mixer, which is under Color Correction, so you can apply that. Let's apply it to the background first, and I'm going to go ahead and click Monochrome. And that makes everything black and white, but just the foreground, or sorry, just the background. So that looks kind of cool, isolating our foreground element from our background element. And then you can also go into, I want you to apply that to the front as well. And I want you to mess around with making some keyframes here. And let's do that at the beginning. So you can use the little stop and start thing here and just move the thing ever so slightly, and every time you do, it'll make a new keyframe for that. And just by moving it around, you can make all sorts of crazy settings. So I'd like you to experiment with that and get something that kind of looks neat, kind of like a flickering effects. So you can play around with that and just get it how you're looking. That just needs to last a few seconds. I want to just show me that you can do that. So it's kind of messing with his color a little bit there. Okay. So when you're done, you're ready to export, you've applied effects to all the three layers, you've got some crazy color going on with our guy here, we've got the letters flying in behind him, and you've made the background black and white. You're going to go ahead and export just like you did the other time. You're going to go to File, Export, add to the Adobe Media Encoder queue, revisit the first video if you need a refresher on how to do that.